This is the very first session of one-shot revision of the entire unit number 1, which is your molecules and their interaction relevant to biology. This particular unit is like major of the time we call it biochemistry, right? And in this entire one-shot revision, we'll have every single pointer discussed in short segment, right? Which will help you in the last minute revision of the entire unit. Second, this unit will, like this entire video, this entire session will help you in pinpointing which particular pointers are important first. Second, everything that you need to revise, every single thing that you need to keep in mind from the biochemistry perspective will be completed here. So make sure that you watch the video till the end. It will be almost 1 hour session, so make sure that every single thing is covered in. Now, for the PDF of the same, you can get the PDF. I'll be uploading it on the Lakshya batch, that is on the Telegram. You can get it from there. And in the batches as well, you'll get it in the content section, right? And if you have any query, any problem, you can let me know. I'll help you out and we can discuss all the details and whatever you wish to like get any doubt cleared from, right? Let's begin. We'll go point by point from the very first point till the last point. Everything is something like every particular pointer is explained in such a way that it becomes easier for you to recall all the pointers, right? So it can help you out in the last minute revision also. Let's begin. Now, if I talk about the most repeated topics from the biochemistry perspective based upon the previous year questions, right? Based upon what all questions have been asked in the past years, we have a list of the various topics. Very first thing is like which almost every student majorly focuses upon is the buffer calculation, right? In which you're given the pH of any two entities and you're supposed to find out what will be the pH of the mixture and everything. So that particular question get asked in from the numerical perspective. Then we have a question from Michaelis-Menten kinetics. Obviously, the entire enzyme concept is very important, which includes your calculation of Km, Vmax, then enzyme inhibition types in which you have non-competitive, competitive, uncompetitive type of enzyme inhibition. Then we have the Ramachandran plot. Obviously, the entire protein concept is very important, right? Then the entire analysis of the protein in which we have the Ramachandran plot being there, very important. Then we have when we learn about the respiration, or when you learn about the glucose oxidation happening in the aerobic and in the anaerobic situation, how much ATP is yield, how much ATP is like finally given out, and how much ATP is produced, how much ATP is utilized, what are the various steps, that is very important. Then we have the beta oxidation pathway. Last year also we got a question from here. Urea cycle, from past 2 years you're getting a question from here. Glycolysis regulation, the yield and the glycolysis regulation is very important. Remember, every specific pathway, every specific cycle, whatever you study, their regulation concept is very important, right? Which particular enzyme is helping in the regulation of what segment. Then electron transport chain. Then you have the protein structure hierarchy from primary to quaternary. Then we have the DNA versus RNA structural differences. Common topic from your molecular biology and your biochemistry segment, very important. Maybe the difference between the type of DNAs itself, or the difference between the DNA and RNA's structural difference. Because of these structural differences, what alterations do you get to see? All these things are there. Then you have enzyme classification, important. Amino acid properties, the pKa values and the calculation of the pKa values. Then we have the carbohydrates, the reducing and the non-reducing sugars. Then we have the lipid membranes, composition and the fatty and the fluidity factors. Then we have the nucleotide synthesis, in which we learn about the purine and the pyrimidine's structure. Then we have the protein folding segment. Then we have thermodynamics part, allosteric regulation, For example, in various metabolism, in various pathways, I told you that we have different steps of regulation. So how do they get regulated, that particular segment, which particular enzyme is regulating which particular step in the pathway, all these are important. Then enzyme cofactor, majorly we get match the following type of question from here. So these are the top yielding questions, highest probable questions in your from your biochemistry unit, right? This is the very first thing. Now we'll revise the entire unit on a stretch. So make sure that you are uh, learning, understanding, and trying to recall as well alongside, right? Now, first thing first, if I talk about the very first pointer, that is your structure of atoms, molecules, and the chemical bonds that we have. So we have key bond types and its property. There are four major key bonds that we have. You have the covalent bonds, right? You have the ionic bonds, you have the van der Waals forces, and then we have the hydrogen bonds being there. So covalent bonds, energy is given to you, their length, the length between or the distance between the two segments, and then their examples are given to you. Then you have ionic bonds, energy, length, and their example. NaCl is the most common example. Then you have hydrogen bonding, in which we have the energy, you have the length, you have the example. The water molecule showcases the hydrogen bonding. Then we have the van der Waals forces, 0.1 to 1, 3.5 to 4 angstrom is the length, and weak interaction. Van der Waals forces are the ones which depends upon the distance between the two, right? Based upon how much distance is there. This was a question asked in the CSIR, that out of the various interactions that we have, which of them depends upon the distance between the two. So when you have close, even like when the distance is very too much, or like when the distance between two of the segments is more than required, van der Waals force will not exist. But if the distance is less enough for it to sustain it, at that time you have the van der Waals forces being there, right? Then you have electronegativity order. So this is the order of the electronegativity. Then you have the hybridization. Three type of hybridization are there: sp3, sp2, and sp. There was a question asked based upon that what hybridization is there in the water molecule. So let me know what is the hybridization in the water molecule, or what hybridization segment do you get to see, and what is the angle between what hydrogen and two oxygen, what is the angle over here. Both of these things have been asked in the examination, so make sure you write it down in the comment section. Then you have the resonance, so it stabilizes the molecules, right? So benzene, peptide bonds, when you learn about that how does the two amino acids are making up a bond with each other, they get connected to each other with the help of, or they join up with each other with the help of the peptide bonds. In the peptide bonds, you learn about that it has a partial double bond characteristic, because of which it is planar in nature, right? So this partial double bond character is because of the resonance, because of the jumping characteristic of your peptide bond. Okay, then stabilizing interactions we have just seen over here. Then you have the protein stability factors. What are the various factors via which you get to see the protein stability being there? So you have the hydrophobic core, which is the main stabilizing force, right? Then you have hydrogen bonds, which you get to see majorly in the secondary structure. So when I talk about the protein structure or proteins entire complexity increment, so it starts with the primary structure, then you have secondary structure, then you have tertiary structure, and then you have the quaternary structure. So in the secondary structure, from primary to secondary structure formation, it is with the help of the hydrogen bond formation between them, right? Then we have tertiary, and then we have the quaternary one. So after that we have the disulfide bonds, the cross linking, which happens because of the presence of sulfur, free sulfur being there. Write down which particular amino acid has a free sulfur in it, because of which it can participate in the hydrogen bond formation. You have to write down all the answers in the comment section. Then we have the peptide bonds. Then we have the disulfide bonds, glycosidic bonds, ester bonds, phosphodiester bond, van der Waals forces, and the hydrophobic interaction. Definition of each one is written down, and you have the examples being there. For example, if I talk about a peptide bond, so it's a covalent type of bond between the amino of one amino acid and the carboxylic group of the other amino acid, and these two join in together to make up the entire peptide bond. Then we have the disulfide bond. So when we have the bond formation between the sulfur atom of the cysteine residues that we have. Then you have the phosphodiester bond. So it is the bond between the phosphate group and the hydroxyl group of the two nucleotides that are participating in, and then it gets the, we have the final phosphodiester bond being there. So example for this is the DNA and the RNA backbone, right? So remember all the other examples as well, type of bond and their definition. You can easily get a question from here, match the following part or similar format. Then you have the biomolecules, structure and function, second topic. So first thing is about the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates classification, if I talk about, we have monosaccharides, disaccharides, and then we have the polysaccharides being there. Example for monosaccharide, example is glucose, fructose, and galactose. For disaccharide, example is sucrose, lactose, and maltose. For polysaccharide, example is starch, glycogen, and cellulose. All of them have a specific function also to perform in, right? Then if I talk about the main key factors, so D and L configuration determines by the penultimate carbon. Then alpha and beta anomers is based upon the location of your hydroxyl group. Is it either above the plane or below the plane? Then you have the reducing sugars, so free anomic carbons. Then you have non-reducing sugars, which does not have free anomeric carbons being there, right? So reducing sugar example is glucose and maltose, and non-reducing sugar example is the sucrose part. Then if I talk about its metabolism part, in the metabolism part, what do we get to see? The first thing is your glycolysis being there, right? So glycolysis is what? It's a 10-step process in which I have my glucose getting converted into 2 pyruvic acid, right? It's a 10-step process. Initial 5 steps are the preparatory phase. Next 5 steps are the payoff phase, right? In the preparatory phase, my entire glucose gets ready to convert into the pyruvate. All the things are getting used up in the initial 5 steps, and in the last final 5 steps, I have my production of the segments being there, be it NADH, be it the payoff phase, and all these things, right? Then if I talk about the various key enzymes and the regulation, in the glycolysis, there are 3 main key enzymes. This entire presentation will give you a number of different pointers which can help you out in revising the facts and solving out a lot of part B questions. Okay, so first is hexokinase, glucokinase, then you have phosphofructokinase, and then we have the pyruvate kinase. These 3 are the main regulatory enzymes, right? Hexokinase or glucokinase is the rate limiting enzyme in the liver and the muscles. Phosphofructokinase, PFK1, it is the main regulatory enzyme. And pyruvate kinase, which help in the conversion of your phosphoenol pyruvate into the pyruvic acid in the last step of your glycolysis. That also is a regulatory step. Whenever a step is regulatory, it will always be unidirectional. So in glycolysis, out of the 10 steps, 7 steps are bidirectional, and 3 steps where we have these 3 enzymes participating in, these 3 are the ones which are unidirectional in nature, right? So PFK1 regulation, activators and inhibitors. So your phosphofructokinase 1 activators are AMP, ADP, PI, and fructose 2,6 bisphosphate. What is AMP? Adenosine monophosphate. ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And inhibitor are ATP citrate and H plus, right? Then if I talk about the net yield in my entire glycolysis. So in the aerobic respiration condition, it will be 2 ATPs and 2 NADH. 1 NADH is equal to approximate 2.5 ATP, so total ATP in total. And in anaerobic respiration, you have 2 ATPs and 2 of the lactates being there, right? So important part. Then you have glyconeogenesis. So you have the key enzymes bypassing irreversible steps. In this glucose 6-phosphatase, it converts 6 glucose 6-phosphate into glucose. Then you have fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, which converts fructose 1,6-bisphosphate into this. Then you have PEPCK and pyruvate carboxylase, which convert the pyruvate into the phosphoenol pyruvate. What is the core concept in your entire glyconeogenesis? So to maintain the blood glucose levels during fasting, starvation, or intense exercise, right? What is the location? So primary location, or primarily it occurs in the liver and in the kidneys, right? So primary liver, 90% of the glyconeogenesis occurs in liver and 10% is there in your kidney cortex part, right? So remember about this particular segment. Then we have oxidative phosphorylation, right? Oxidative phosphorylation is in which we learn about the electron transport chain, your ETC, electron transport chain, in which you have number of different complexes participating in. The inhibitors of each of the complexes are very important. In the past few years, we have regularly got a question. So very, very important, right? Then we have proton pumping. So complex 1 helps out in 4 of the hydrogen atoms being there, 4 of hydrogen atoms being there. In complex 3, 4 again, and in complex 4, 2. So in total, there are 10 hydrogen bonds per NADH and 6 hydrogen bonds per FADH2 that are pumped in, right? So it starts with the complex 1 on the same energy level. Complex 2 is somewhat here, then it pumps over here. Then we have coenzyme COQ being there, which takes up the electrons, pumps it to the complex 3, which via your cytochrome C pumps it to complex 4 and then to the oxygen part, right? So remember about this. Then you have the ATP yield. NADH approximately makes up around 2.5 ATPs, and FADH2 makes up, or it is equivalent to, about 1.5 ATPs, right? And in this entire segment, we have the direct substrate phosphorylation being there, which makes up, or which yields around 1 ATP, right? Followed by this, see what is the location if I talk about. So inner mitochondrial membrane. In the eukaryotes, it occurs in the inner mitochondrial membrane, and in the prokaryotes, it occurs in the plasma membrane, right? So electron transport chains overview, where does it occur, the location, the site of the same, right? Then we have the complexes, their name, their functions, and their cofactors. Complex 1, NADH dehydrogenase, it transfers the electrons from NADH to ubiquinol. Then you have complex 2. In this you have succinate dehydrogenase being there. Function is it transports, or it transfers the electron from FADH2 to the coenzyme Q. So complex 1 is here, complex 2 is here, complex 3 is here, and complex 4 is here. And over here you have one of the bypasser, and over here you have the second bypasser, right? The one which will be helping in the transportation. Then you have coenzyme Q. So ubiquinol, lipid soluble carrier, it moves the electron from complex 1 to complex 3. So from 1 and 2 to complex 3, it is via coenzyme Q, and from 3 to 4, it is via your cytochrome B6. Sorry, it is with the help of your cytochrome C. It is again a small protein carrier. Then we have complex 4. It is a cytochrome C oxidase, which transfers the electron to the final acceptor, which is the oxygen, right? It transfers the electron to oxygen and converts it into the water part, right? And over here you have the various cofactors. Then we have the TCA cycle, that is the citric acid cycle, which is in which we have 3 rate limiting steps or 3 rate limiting enzymes: citrate synthase, isocitrate dehydrogenase, and alpha ketoglutarase dehydrogenase. So citrate synthase, it converts acetyl coenzyme A plus OAA into citrate. Then you have isocitrate dehydrogenase converting isocitrate into alpha ketoglutarate, and then you have alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase converting it into succinyl coenzyme A, right? And then if I talk about the TCA yield, if I talk about the Krebs cycles yield being there, so 3 NADH is approximately 7.5, 1 FADH, one of the FADH2 is equivalent to around 1.5, and 1 GTP is 1 ATP, and total is 10 ATPs. This is per acetyl coenzyme A. And when we talk about the entire for one glucose, there are 2 acetyl coenzyme A that are being produced, and as a result you have in total 20 ATPs that gets produced in the one entire glucose cycle. Okay, because one glucose converts, or with the help of one glucose you have 2 pyruvic acid. 2 pyruvic acid converts into 2 acetyl coenzyme A, and for one, like in one TCA cycle, one single acetyl coenzyme A gets metabolized, and in two of them will be getting metabolized, and as a result 20 ATPs in total. So in the examination, if you get a question, make sure that you are focusing upon, is it asking you about one glucose yield in TCA or one what do we say, TCA cycles. So if it is one TCA cycle, the answer would be 10. If it is one glucose molecule, the answer would be 20. So you have to be very much sure about that what the question is asking it, right? The next segment of lipids. So in the lipids, we have major classes. First one is the fatty acid. Then we have the membrane lipids. So fatty acids can be saturated, they can be unsaturated, and we have the essential ones. So saturated is in which there is no double bonds. In unsaturated, in which there is double bonds being there. Then we have the lipids which are essential also. Example is linolenic acid and linoic acid and linolenic acid. All of these are the 2 examples of essential fatty acids. Then we have the membrane lipids, right, which includes the phospholipid, sphingolipid, sterol, etc. What all things you can remember? Talking about melting point. So if any fatty acid is having no double bonds, and then if it is having more of the double bonds, so melting point of the saturated fatty acid is more than the unsaturated one. Then in unit number 2 also you'll be learning more about it, about the membrane fluidity and everything. So if any membrane is having unsaturated fatty acids being more, so it will be having more of the fluidity. So more unsaturated fatty acid means more fluidity, and vice versa, less or saturated one will be having less of fluidity. Then you have the cholesterol. So it modulates the membrane fluidity in totality. Then if I talk about the lipid metabolism, so first thing is about the beta oxidation, right? So it converts the fatty acid into acetyl coenzyme A. What are the steps in the entire lipid metabolism? It starts with activation, then we have oxidation, then we have hydration, then we have oxidation again, and then we have thiolysis, right? 5 of the steps are there: activation, oxidation, hydration, oxidation again, and then the thiolysis. Then talking about the ATP yield in palmitate. So activation yield is approximately 2 ATP. In beta oxidation, you have 7 cycles, 1 FADH2 and 1 of the NADH. So 1 FADH2 and 1 NADH. FADH2 will give you 1.5. This is going to give you 2.5. So 1.5 plus 2.5. How much it would be? 4, right? Then 35, 5, 7, 7 fours are 28. It should be around 28. Or if they're taking 2, sometimes, yeah, sometimes in the uh, round off figure, FADH2 gives up 2 and it is considered to give 2 ATPs as a result, and NADH gives up 3. So 2 plus 3 is 5, right? So based on that, it would be 35. So you can take an average of 28 to 35 depending upon what the options are given to you. You have to mark the answer accordingly. Then talking about the fatty acid synthesis, so we have the rate limiting enzyme, which is the acetyl coenzyme A carboxylases, which is ACC. Location is cytoplasm. Cofactor is biotin and NADPH, and regulation is with the help of citrate and palmitoyl coenzyme A. Citrate is an activator, palmitoyl coenzyme A is a inhibitor. Then we have the nucleic acid conformation, if I talk about the next term. So we have 3 major DNA forms: B form, A form, and the Z form. B form is the normal, most common type of DNA that we have. A is the low hydration and Z is high salt and GC rich content, right? So B form is right-handed, major groove. A form is right-handed, wider groove, and Z form is left-handed and it is majorly zigzag, right? So how do the DNA and RNA looks like? So DNA has the sugar, which is deoxyribose. Bases are ATGC, structure is double helix, and storage function is storage. RNA is ribose, AUGC, single stranded, and synthesis or regulation part. Then we have the stability of proteins and the nucleic acid. So what are the various factors based on which we have the protein denaturation factors being there? So temperature, pH, detergents, heavy metals, chaperotypes, which includes like various ureas, guanidine, phosphatase, the additional chemicals that are being taken up. Then detergent, it disrupts your hydrophobic interactions. pH alters the ionization states. Temperature breaks up the various interactions. And heavy metals, they bind to the sulfur atom that we talk about, right? Then we have the protein folding helpers. 3 protein folding helpers are there: chaperones, disulfide isomerase, and peptidyl prolyl isomerase. So all of them have specific role to perform. Then DNA's stability is based upon the melting temperature, the GC content, salt concentration, and the pH, right? So melting temperature is the temperature at which you have the bonds getting disrupted. GC content is the guanine cytosine content. GC has 3 hydrogen bonds in between, and adenine and thymine has 2 hydrogen bonds. So GC has more of the requirement of temperature. Higher GC means more of the melting temperature, 3 bonds versus the 2 bonds, right? That's the reason why when there is, like when we learn about the DNA replication part and the origin where the DNA replication begins in, that location or that particular position have more of the AT content rather than the GC content. Why? Because it takes lesser energy for the AT content to, or AT bond to break. Then salt concentration, and then we have the pH. So extreme pH is going to denature, because every protein works or requires a specific pH to work upon. So when the pH is very high or when the pH is very low, in both the scenarios, the disruption is going to be there. Then when we talk about the B form of DNA, so it has major properties like 10 base pairs per turn are there, 3.4 angstrom per base pair rise, 34 angstrom per turn. Diameter is 20 angstrom, major groove is 22 angstrom, minor groove is approximately 12 angstrom. Then in RNA, we have types of RNAs being tRNA, rRNA, mRNA, and miRNA. tRNA is transfer RNA, which is clover leaf secondary structure, and the structure is almost like this. It is somewhat like this. This is a variable R, right? It is an L-shaped tertiary one. Then rRNA is ribosomal, mRNA is messenger, and then you have the miRNA. All of them have specific functions to them and specific characteristic properties. Then nucleotide metabolism. So there are two ways, like two of the different nucleotides are there. We have purine and pyrimidines. Purine's synthesis, the rate limiting enzyme